want to move into our high holiday theme. I want to remind you as briefly as I can where we are as I've been developing these thoughts. In my first week, I talked about learning the practice of examining consciousness. We call this hitbonenut in Hebrew. It's not an alpha meditation where you go into the one note, the one theme, the one word, the one mantra, but rather stepping above consciousness, looking down and watch what's happening there. I think for a young person, this can be very painful if they've never done it before, because as we get older, we sometimes get wise to ourselves. We know that when we're being pretentious and we're living falsely, and one way or another, holy people alert us to a kind of spiritual dishonesty that we're all aware of as we get older. But I remember for myself, when I really began to be interested in spiritual study, I learned the idea of the big lie. And that is some pretense, some version of the self, some persona, some mask that comes together in late adolescence, early adulthood, and you start to have an affect. You start to learn how to be a certain self, and it's hiding something. It's a version of self. It's adaptive to life pain. You figured out a way to be, and what you're doing, and I remember this as a young person, I'm not facing what was happening in me, why I cultivated this persona. And I remember looking at patterns of being, and I realized they were affects. They were ways of consolidating my life into a persona, into a mask. This is a very Jungian idea that the inner life creates a persona, which actually means mask in Latin. So you don't have to look at yourself. You actually believe in your mask. By the way, this is one of the reasons I like to call the golden calf incident Egel HaMasecha, the molten calf, because in Hebrew the word masecha, which means molten, also means mask. Because in the old days they would make a mask by having a clay a mask of the face and then putting tin or something into it and bring it out, and you have a mask. You have a version of your face, and then you, as it were, go out onto the stage and you present that mask to the world. So the Egel HaMasecha, the molten calf, is the calf of masking. So you don't have to be real. You can just show everybody your mask. And then when you realize everybody's wearing a mask, which the adolescent says everybody else is wearing a mask, no one's being real. And then you say, I'm also wearing a mask. And why can't I be real? I don't even know what real is. Now, in saying this, I don't want to say there is a static, real, authentic self, because there's not. It's constant. There's constant, I say, a vortex happening in the inner life. And there's this mystery, which is why I think transformation from the Hasidic perspective is a mystery. It's a miracle, because something says it's time to go into a higher consciousness. It's time to look down at the vortex. It's time to examine yourself. Well, what wills that moment when you decide to look at yourself? And what wills you to see through yourself? And what guides you to produce a more authentic self? It is such a deep mystery. There's a sense of in Greek we call kairos, like the perfect time for it. In Hebrew, et with an ayin. It's not just zman, chronological time. It's a time for something. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says et. It's a time for this. Well, it's the time for transformation. It's the time when you say to yourself, I'm not believing in myself anymore. This fraud I've been getting away with, this hiding that I've been doing, time's up. I'm going to go to a higher part of myself. I'm going to look down, and as much as I can for this year, I'm going to straighten this out. So that's my first week, and this is something. It's something I talked about. I'll keep talking about it. It's a lifelong skill. The younger, the better. Any people, whatever, under 60, under 50, there, do this the rest of your life. Your life will be better. For those of older ones of us, yeah, we still hope God will have a lot of life to live. Um, uh, but it's also the time for us to really do an accounting of the lives that we led, our hopes, our dreams, our failures, our flaws, everything, as it were, we have to put into a Mishnah Torah, into a teaching. I'm working on that, and it's really something incredible to have something like a spiritual autobiography, which I think is a prerequisite for hishtanut, for change. Of course, the next week I talked about we're going to live in a cultural symbol system anyway, through the teaching of Ernst Cassirer and Susanna K. Langer. If you create an intentional symbolical world in which you live instead of one haphazardly ingested from the culture, you'll do better in your life because you're consciously going to pick a spiritual and moral path of integrity. Uh, and one thing we ought to avoid, and this is from my perspective, I could be wrong, so I'm giving a teaching, and feel free to doubt my teaching. By the way, if you want to know one of the sources of what I'm going to say next is Sir Francis Bacon, who is a great spiritual psychological teacher, which is he's asking, why do people make mistakes? Why do people think poorly? Why do people think such weird things? Meaning, Francis Bacon knew most of our problems in life come from poor thinking. So I forget which book it is, but I was very impressed when I read it. He said, start with all of the bad information that other people gave you, including your culture, including your religion, including other teachers of authority who ought not have taught. Wherever they got their license to teaching from, it should be revoked. So there are many people teaching that their teachings have never actually been tested, but rather we accept what we've heard and we move on in life. And sometimes we just keep these bad ideas in our heads, or one day we wake up and you say to yourself, well, that was a really a terrible idea. I'll just give you one little taste. I have a particular animus to Course in Miracles and Law of Attraction. First of all, why do I like it? Yes, when we live our lives, we attract certain people to us. We have the opportunity. Sometimes we attract the animosity of other people. Sometimes we attract good people. Yeah, there is some truth that we do have some role in our lives. But I had never heard of Law of Attraction, of Course in Miracles. I went to a hospital visit and a person had cancer of the throat. And we had some form of conversation. And the person said to me, well, I know why I have the cancer. I said, why? And she said, because they didn't speak up. And I was aghast. I said, oh, excuse me? Well, I read this book, I forget, some Christian science teacher, that everything in our body is a manifestation of some kind of spiritual malady. So if you have problems in your throat, it's because you're not speaking up, because you're repressing. You have problems in your back because you're shouldering too much. You have problems in your eyes because you spiritually refuse to see. And I heard this, I thought, I was aghast. Because I've studied religion, this is the worst form of American Puritanism, meaning you suffer because you're not pure. If you could become pure, you wouldn't have glaucoma, you wouldn't have problems with your throat, you wouldn't have back problems. You're just not pure enough, meaning everything you suffer from is your fault because you are not clean inside, so you're attracting bad things. The more I heard about it, the more upset I was. Why do people who live in wonderful affluent neighborhoods? Because they draw goodness to themselves. And that poor kid who got not killed in the drive-by missed and killed a 12-year-old girl on her porch. Well, she must have attracted that bullet, right? The people dying in Sudan, I guess they attracted a famine. The people on October 7th, I guess they. I mean, I don't want to say it. It's so horrid. And I would meet people and they would say, yes, law of attraction, and we have energy, we draw to ourselves. Do you mean this really, or a little bit, or metaphorically? And they kind of believed it. I thought, wow, this is really bad medicine. I'm a Lurianic Kabbalist. The world is broken. And no one's in charge, not even God. And there's randomness. And we can learn how to deal with the outrageous slings and fortunes, but don't believe that the outrageous sling that came your way is your fault. It might be somebody else's bad doing. So there's an example. Now, Roger Bacon didn't have to deal with this, although he certainly had to deal with a kind of religious fundamentalism that says God's in charge of everything and everything that happens is God's will. That's a version of this, by the way. And I've been fighting that my whole life. When a person, oh, it's God's will. I said, how do you know it's God's will? Isn't everything that happens from God? Oh, yeah, but they're contrary. I remember one person said, well, my car got stolen. It was God teaching me to not prize material things. I said, what about the thief? Is the thief off the hook, or is he just an agent of God? Well, no, he has to deal with the fact that assuming it's a he, um, that he feels he's permitted to steal other people's property. I said, well, which is it? Is God teaching you a lesson, or did God teaching you? Well, all the lessons are taught, and life is just lessons. There's no bad, there's no good, it's all lessons. I think to myself, this is such a crazy way of thinking, that nothing's right, nothing's wrong, nothing's good, nothing's bad. We just live in a classroom. And all the horrible things that people do to us, it's a classroom. I thought to myself, they're just avoiding reality. They're just avoiding evil. People do terrible things. And the more you quiz people with this idea that everything's in God's will. Sometimes they say it's in the Bible. I say, excuse me. And I show some biblical stories like Job. I said, Job is a horror story. Yeah, God's in charge and God's a fiend, according to Jack Miles. But so I tried to say, well, I hope I'm not offending anybody here. I assume if you're here on a Shabbos morning, you're probably not tied to the idea that everything is as it's supposed to be. It'll work out as it's supposed to be. I said, maybe not. Maybe it's supposed to be something better, and maybe we all got to get to work. Look, if this is your thought, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. I've just seen way too much random suffering in the world to think this is the hand of a loving and gracious God. I just can't accept it. And that's why I'm a Lurianic Kabbalist, that bad things happen to good people, and we have to support each other as much as we can and cultivate the resistance to get ourselves through when our lives are rough, and not say, well, God's teaching me a lesson. It's supposed to be. Everything will turn out as it is supposed to be. I don't believe that. I think it leads to a kind of a quietism where when things go bad, I'm being taught a lesson. Remember, a rabbinical student once gave a drashan where she said, we have to welcome the bad as the good. And I was in the audience, and I said to the person, I said, it sounds really pious. I said, but do you actually believe it? When something horrible happens to a person, they have a terrible accident and they're disfigured forever, that's God's will to teach them a lesson? He says, well, isn't everything from God? I said, I'm asking you what you think. Now, I did this privately. I'm asking you what you think. Don't try to sound pious. Don't try to sound religious. Don't try to sound what clergy you're supposed to sound like. Do you actually believe when something horrible happens to a person and they're disfigured or maimed for life, it's the hand of God teaching them a lesson? And the person said to me, no. I said, thank you. Somebody else put that idea in your head, and you think to be a spiritual person, you're supposed to say that kind of a thing. I'm thinking of Yitz Greenberg, about Holocaust theology. Don't say any theology you cannot say to a mother watching her child have been thrown into a fire during the Holocaust. If you have a theology, go and say it to her. And if you can't say it to her, then don't say it. I taught Holocaust for many years, and it's a very painful thing to think. But if you have a theology, go to the worst case and say it there. If you're not going to say it there, you might want to rethink your theology, which is what led me to Lurianic Kabbalah. So the symbol system that I live in is not a perfect God. Everything's from the hand of God. Everything is supposed to be. I don't live in that symbolic universe. I live in the symbolic universe of Lurianic Kabbalah. There's brokenness within God. There's brokenness within us. And our job is to heal ourselves and heal God by breaking through the husk and releasing sparks and being on the side of light as we face darkness within and darkness in the world. And it's a fight. And not everything is from God. In fact, what's from God, from my perspective, is the passion to break the husk and release the sparks and fight evil. That's from God. So it's a symbolic universe that I live in. However, of all the possible symbolic universes in Judaism, I chose that one. And I'm not going to commit the existentialist bad faith of pretending it's the only one in this Jewish tradition. I mean, there's the pious belief it's all from God. There are many people who believe that in Judaism. I don't. So in this vast spectrum of the symbolic universes in which we live, I've chosen Lurianic Kabbalah. I teach Lurianic Kabbalah, and as much as any poetic mythic system can be true, I believe it's true, and that's the truth that I teach. Last week, I actually went to this idea of truth, especially discovering, again, from a Hasidic perspective, is discovering the truth of our motivations. It's a very difficult thing to encounter. When I've, in a lot of my counseling, which has had so much to do with virtue, which means virtuous restraint. No criticizing other people. I'll review this again. I'm reviewing it on Wednesday nights, by the way, and I'll be reviewing high holidays. No criticizing other people, including unsolicited advice. Don't do it. Stop it. No complaining about other people to themselves, even behind their back in Lashon Hara, especially insincere why questions. You want to say something, say it straight. No condemnatory language, um, accusing, blaming, labeling, insulting, the whole laundry list that I give every time I teach it. And no escalating conflict after a couple of sessions, after a couple of rounds, back off. Now, people don't do it. I still have trouble with every single day. No four C's, no bad Jedi. Live with good cheer. Be loving. If I have a trouble for a moment, don't talk. Hold my breath. I rehearse the rules every single day with great determination, and I still get thrown off. I'm doing better than I used to because I'm like the king in the story. I got it written down. I have a handout. I read it over and over again. I'm doing better, but it's still very difficult. Um, and so what this has to do when people break bad with this, when a person says, you told me not to text, and I got this text from my, from this one was with his adult daughter, really flipped him out. He got into a text war, and they were estranged. And he came to me and started with, I have a horrible daughter. I said, so what happened? And he showed me the text, and I said, "Yeah, I'm reading what you wrote, not what she wrote." I said, "I think you broke bad on the virtue." So, well, what was I supposed to do? Not text? Don't talk? Heard that before? Don't talk, don't text, don't email, take a breath, and say and do the wisest thing you can, at least not to make it worse. He says, "Yeah, yeah, I kind of remember you're saying that." I said, "Well, you forgot it because you weren't reading your Mishnah Torah. You weren't reading the rest of the Torah. Yeah, I wrote the handout. Maybe you should write your own handout." And so, as I've counseled people over the years, they know what to do. As I said, so what was your motivation? Let's go deep inside. You know the wall of virtue. We've discussed it. You've signed on. You know it's the right way to live. No four C's, no bad Jedi, all the corollaries. You've taken the class with me 3 times. What happened? What was the motivation? The motivation is often they can't talk to me that way. They can't get away with that. So in order to even the score, if they're punitive with me, I'll punish them even more. It's like Lamech in the book of Genesis. He says, when God gives the ot kain kinds, anybody who touches kind, I'm going to get back at them sevenfold. Strange thing, where God says, I'm going to protect. Right? We're going to talk about this in the Genesis class, either this time or next time. And Lamech says, I'm going to do it 77 times. And that's Lamech's rule of life. Anybody who messes with me, I'm going to give it back to them 77-fold. And it's in the Torah. This is this guy's his rule for life. Of course, this all ends with Noah's flood, where God says, y'all walking around with that 77, for everything that happens to me, yeah, I'm just going to kind of wipe the thing out and start it again. If you look at Genesis 4, 5, and 6, you can see God saying, wow, this has gone so wrong. I have no idea how to fix this. What was I thinking when I created the world? I didn't try to make things better. And then God wipes out the world, tries to start over. Still doesn't go well. And here we are, still trying to help God along. In any case, we have this, as it were, internal rules, internal corollaries, internal exemptions. And this one person was very open with me. The further we went out, we went inside, it came to, no one gets to talk to me like that. Not even my daughter. They don't get to talk to me like that. I said, yeah, they do. They do get to talk to you like that because that's humanity. What you can do is you can set a kind, clear, firm boundary. You can hold yourself and work it out later. But if you decide that you're lemech, someone offends me, I get back at them 77-fold. We end with Noah's flood. Not literally, of course, but just the destructive flood of negative thoughts, feelings, and emotion washes over us, washes over people. By the way, some families never repair. Some families never repair. when people have this internal code. Some relationships never repaired. That's why sometimes we have estrangement and divorce and so forth. Maybe some couldn't be saved, shouldn't be saved, but some could have, if people would have been able to look at themselves, live by some kind of symbolic code, be honest with themselves, which is the last week, the third week of what are my internal motivations that motivate me to break the value system to which I have committed myself, to which I have committed myself. Nearly every time I counsel people in trouble, if they're honest, they look back and say, "You're right. I knew better. I should have been more forthright, more courageous, more honest, less judgmental." I mean, when we really get to it, people say, "You're right. I I I regret it." My question is, we all make terrible mistakes. If you don't live with regret, you're not a moral person. The question is, what motivated you? What motivated you to break the code? Now, this is very, very deep word. I'm looking at Helleniers and Viktor Frankl. I mean, this is our logos, right? This is the meaning of our lives, to live by an honor code. It doesn't matter your parents and what happened to you and all the reasons you're acting out. There's a certain point you say, well, what's my logos? What's my purpose? What's the path that I'm on? And whatever got me here, today is the day when I decide to do better, to live with meaning and purpose. And of course, the key meaning and purpose is to transform yourself into the best spiritual and moral version that you can. Now, last night I brought up a very powerful metaphor that I learned in the 12-step world, which is why do people become addicts? And it's a really interesting phrase. They have a God-sized hole in their heart, and using the alcohol metaphor, that they're filling up with alcohol. Okay. And I thought about that. And I thought, okay, so at some level, we all have God-sized hole in our hearts, and the God-sized hole does not want us to see that it's there. So when you think of all of the negative ego states, all of our thoughts, feelings, emotions, speech, and behavior that do not align with the honor code, it comes from the hole in the heart. It's trying to find some compensation out in the world, either being depressed, defensive, aggressive, fearful, the whole range of negative ego states. Try to imagine they're all compensations for the unseen. In the Hasidic world, they say the terror. There's a terror. It's too painful to look at. So your unconscious ego self is finding all kinds of strategies not to face what appears to be an abyss within. Is something looking to be healed. Because to look at that part that needs to be healed, it's frightening sometimes to see how damaged we are. Not because of our parents, Kabbalistically, because of chakra, because we're broken, because God is broken. Who knows why we come into the world with this brokenness within, but don't inflict the brokenness on others, either from fear, from cowardice, from aggression, from judgmentalism, whatever your deal is, whatever the game is, right? Stop. That's the minute. Just stop and face it. Whatever misery you're causing yourself and other people, there's something, just try to imagine something in you that's saying, don't look at me. Just engage in these kinds of behaviors, but do not look in here. So if this is the fourth Shabbos, so we have three more to go on the way to Rosh Hashanah. This is the one where we're focused on lehishtanot, to transform. And if we've gone through examining consciousness, picking a core metaphoric path, developing a life of truth, this is the Shabbos, as it were, of transformation. We're in the month of Elul. I want to give you two very, maybe three very brief examples. There was a falling out between friends. This is adolescence. And a mother who had taken my parenting the soul of the child class, very impressed, and she was really going to work on her parenting. She said, can you counsel my daughter and her friend there who've had a falling out? I said, if they'll talk to me, sure. And wow, she like made it worth it to her daughter to spend, and her daughter's friend says, look, instead of ending our friendship forever, can we have a session with Rabbi Finley? Because I was really impressed. I said, okay. So you can almost guess the story is a love triangle. Um, uh, there's a guy in the picture, and we'll call him Reuben, and we'll call one of these young women Sarah. And Reuben and Sarah had kind of a thing going on. And over here was Rivka, Rebecca. And suddenly Reuben and Rebecca are eyeing each other. And he liked Rebecca and she liked Reuben. They had a thing going on. And Sarah's over here on the side and she says, Rebecca, are you after Reuben? So no, 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 there's nothing going on. He's your guy. And of course, the whole time he texts her, she texts him. There's a thing going on. And finally, Sarah finds out and says, you're a liar, you're dishonest, you betrayed me, and basically ending the friendship. Um, and they were one step away from estrangement. So I get him in front of me, and first I'll call the Rebecca. I say, "What's up?" She says, she said, I don't know why I didn't tell her. I said, "Well, why don't people tell things?" I was afraid. So what you did is you look back and you know you should have told her, but you were afraid. It's like the cover up. And every week you didn't tell her, it got worse and worse and worse. She says, yes. I want you to go back to that moment when you got the first text from Ruben. You say, okay, I got a text from Ruben and I kind of falling in love with, I got a crush on this guy. You say to Ruben, I'm taking your text to Sarah. No, don't do it. Sorry, man. Sorry. You wrote me a text, not going to keep it secret, partly because Sarah's my friend. I'm trying to change this young lady's consciousness, and partly because I'm an honorable person. Whatever happens, I'm going to be an honorable person. Now, I said to this young lady, nobody lives that way, not in high school and not after high school, but they look back and wish they did. Every person who didn't say, wait a minute, I'm a person of honor. I'm going to have this really uncomfortable moment of telling my friend there's something going on. Ruben, you're going to feel really embarrassed and we're all going to feel horrible, but I have a secret. And because I'm honorable, I'm going to take it to my friend and she's going to say, you were flirting with him and he wrote you for a reason. You're going to say, yeah, you're right. And we will never be friends, but I will have been honorable. And she said, no, I could never have done that. Nobody does that way. I said, I'm not saying anybody does it. I'm asking you about your future. I want you to think this moment is, they weren't Jewish, so I didn't say Rosh Hashanah. I said, uh, um, this is a moment of transformation. I want you to look deep inside. Try to imagine living without fear. Try to imagine that your integrity and your honor is the most important thing to you. I said, I want you to breathe that. And I want you to toughen yourself up and imagine going over to the Sarah character and saying, I have something to tell you, get it out, stop talking, and let her be mad at you. And whatever she says, you say, you're right. I flirted. I'm at least half of this stuff with Ruben. You're right. And if we're never friends, we're never friends. But I was not going to keep this secret. And she got to the point where she said, wow, I don't know if I can do that. I said, do you will yourself to do it? And I can take yes, no, or maybe. Do you will yourself to do it? You're 18. At 28, do you want to be the person that's known for, wow, she's really great. And she also has this honorable sense about her. She's a person of truth and honor. Do you, or not? You want to hide till it gets bad? And she says, yes, I want to be that person when I'm 28. I said, great. So take my wisdom classes, read my book when it comes out. I'll help you get there. But that choice, I want to be a person of honor because I've looked at myself. I live in fear, which allows me to betray, allows me to be disloyal. And I said, every kid goes through this. And if they didn't go, they go through what your friend is going through, which I'm going to talk about next. And I said, but at a certain point in life, you say it's time to stop it and do it when you're 18 and not 58 or 68. Do it now. She really got it. She really got it. And last I heard, I was like, she's going to take my wisdom classes. I don't know, but at least, you know, I got her to say yes. Now the other young lady, I said to her, yeah, this was happening live. I said, you have a more serious problem because you're the victim. You're offended and you've dug into judgmentalism because you have the moral high ground. She said, what am I supposed to do? Let her walk over me? I said, I never said those words. I want you to listen to me. You're 18. You have a choice not to be hard-hearted. Your friend is only 18. She's a kid and you're a kid, but you're being very stern and very judgmental. And then I asked her, have have you ever had boyfriends and relationships fall apart? She tried to skirt the issue. She says, yeah, I've had good friends and boyfriends and work. I said, why not? She says, because they weren't good people. I said, maybe there's average people. Did they rob banks? Did they kill anybody? No, they just, and I could all of a sudden see this burgeoning judgmental person with a very strong moral compass. And she takes that compass and she smacks other people with her moral compass. And suddenly I could see her future, that she's better than everybody and no one lives up to her standards. She's going to chase everybody away from her. And I said to her, I really beg you to hear me through. I said, I think you're a terrific person. I admire people with a strong moral compass, but there's a downside because you can be so unforgiving. Because sometimes other people are attracted to you because of your strength and your moral clarity. And you just have to say, hey, you're a human. You know, you had a bad moment. Are you committed to some transformation? I said, because you might be a shining light that can help people, or you could just be judgmental and throw people out of your life. I said, because I've seen people do that the rest of their life and they end up, you know, solitary moral rectitude. But there's things that could have been salvaged along the way if they had just been a little kinder. Now, I didn't say that I was teaching Kabbalah, but I saw Gevura here and a kind of a chesed here. I want to be loved, so I will hide. And I need to be strong and judgmental. And I said, over here, you need a little more Gevura, a little more dignity, a little more honor, a little more moral strength. Again, I didn't use Kabbalah. I didn't want to confuse the issue. You can learn more chesed. And then I said to this person, would you like to learn chesed? She said, yeah, but she lied to me. I said, I said, no, we've already established that she did a bad thing. So I'm asking squarely, would you like to be a person of more grace, more love, more light, but not lose your moral compass? She said, what, just let people walk all over me? I said, I don't think I said that. I said, would you like to be able to be a person of a greater grace, love, and kindness? That when you're 28, you're known as the girl with the strong moral compass, but she has a grace and a light about her as well. And I saw the inner war, you know, when you look at someone's face and their eyes go back and forth and like I know what the right answer is, but I wanted to say it. I said, yes, no, or maybe. Because if it's no, it's no. And I think you will look back at this day later in your life and you wish you would have said yes or no or maybe. If it's yes, I can show you the path. And if it's maybe, yeah, you're open. And I said, but you need to be honest with me now, if you don't mind, saying yes, no, or maybe to me. She said, maybe. I said, that's great for an 18-year-old to say maybe. I said, there's a way. You won't regret it. You won't regret with your moral compass to be a person of greater light and grace and love, including, you know, putting Kabbalistically your strong Gevura over here. Don't give up the part of you that's loving and flirtatious and guys like you because you're, you know, cute and bubbly. However, put that in a container of honor. You won't regret it. So I had the great fortune that a counseling session of just a couple of people just starting out, that they went through the steps. You know, I what's happening inside of me. Yeah, you're right. My fear has me do dishonorable things. Wow, I did not know that. I didn't know that there were words for this. And something like my judgmentalism has had me end relationships. I didn't know that's who I was. So I gave them a symbolic universe. They didn't know I was teaching Kabbalah, but I was. Um, and self-knowledge, you know, as it were, a mythic simple system, know the truth within. And this is the month of transformation. Yes, no, or maybe. Know your inner motivations. Know there's something within you that's having you do this other thing, meaning fear and dishonor, judgmentalism and estrangement. That's coming from, you know, theoretically, an emptiness within. So stop all that. Now, I didn't get this far with them because this, I think, is too spiritual. I gave them a more of a moral code direction. For us here, get your moral code straight, whether you're the Gevurah type or the Chesed type, whatever the deal is. Quiet those negative ego states down and address the God-sized hole within. And there are ways to do it, but it starts with um, being aware of your inner life, putting yourself in the symbolic universe, knowing the truth within. And when the option of transformation comes, say yes. And then for every one of us is going to be different, but you will do whatever it takes. So that's what we say today. I'll do whatever it takes. Like, once I learn the tool, I'm going to write my Mishnah Torah and I will do whatever it takes.